narrate a haunted story caught in a bite. The pregnant women in apartment. It's night in an apartment and a pregnant woman is shown sleeping with the TV on. Suddenly a hand is shown touching her tummy, and upon feeling someone is next to her, she opens her eyes and sees a face in white looking at her, and the woman screams. It's morning in Mumbai, 2004, where something has happened in that house before, where it happened to a costume designer, Nick, who was living in Mumbai. The real person is shown, where she says that it's important for a mother where her child is safe. I was pregnant and I was having medical and health issues, but there were more problems. The story is shown with the actress, where the name of the character is Nehru, where she and her husband Sanjay arrives at a big house, and she steps into the house and asks, how long more do I need to wait, and she opens the eyes and sees the house. As she bends down to pick something, she shouts, and Sanjay asks what happened. She says that our child kicked for the first time. Sanjay opens the window, and as the wind blows, the cloth covering the table falls and a small doll is seen under the table. Nehru sees the doll and she bends to pick it up, and Sanjay asks her not to bend down, and she asks him to bring a vase and place it on the table. Nehru sees a telephone and says a landline. As she is about to pick the phone suddenly rings and she gets scared and drops the doll. Sanjay picks the call, and it's a blank call. As they leave, something is shown walking above them. Sanjay brings Nehru inside the kids' room, where she gets happy and thanks him, saying she has only seen such house in her dream, as it's her dream house, and the husband says, oh, let me show you the rest of the house. She sees a doll in the room and smiles, and as she leaves, close the door. The rocking chair in the room moves on its own. After a few days, they are now moving their things in, and an old lady is looking and says, you just arrived here. Nehru says, come in, we shall have tea and talk. The lady looks worried and looks around. One of the workers drops some things, and as she turns to see what happened, the lady is missing. Sanjay is leaving for work as he is getting late, and she hears a sound in the storeroom. She walks to the room, and the doll is shown there. The real lady is shown saying that after shifting in, small things keeps happening, which is not normal. She likes real flowers very much, but it always gets dried up. It's night, and as she is walking up, she trips on the same doll and almost falls, but she managed to stand, and she says, this same doll. Sanjay comes saying, what are you doing here at this time? Nehru says, I went to have some drinks and they have some arguments, as he calls her a housewife, and she says it was something they both had decided. Suddenly they hear the sound of a door closing, and Sanjay looks where there is nothing. The lady says that one night she calls Sanjay and he says he is at work, and she went to sleep. And as she was sleeping, she hears a sound, and suddenly one by one lights starts going off, and a DAR figure is next to her, and she says, you are back so fast? Suddenly she wakes up and looks at the clock, where it's 8 p.m., and she gets up and calls for Sanjay and goes looking for him around the house. She calls him asking, where have you gone? He says I am leaving the office now, and she says you didn't come home yet. Then here, she gets scared and suddenly the line gets cut and the battery is down. And as she gets up, the light goes out and she lifts a candle and she hears a child crying. She goes towards the room where the sound is coming from and sees the rocking chair moving and suddenly sees someone sitting on it, and as that thing looks at her, she screams and runs down, and the lady falls in front of her and looks at her, and he starts crawling towards her. She gets scared and turns and sees Sanjay and says, I just saw a lady here and there was a sound of a baby crying. The light comes back and he says, don't worry, we shall see together, and as he on the light, he sees a doll on the chair and she says, no, I saw someone else here. She feels like she is going mad as there is something strange happening daily, and one day when she enters the storeroom, she finds a box and she sees photos of a couple and even the lady is pregnant. Suddenly she hears a sound from the room and she gets scared. Days are passing by. Sanjay says what happened. Nehru smiles and says, Sanjeev, do you know who used to be living here before? He says, how should I know? Nehru says that lady was also pregnant. I saw the photographs of that lady, and how would I tell you? Sanjeev says, you have told me many things, so tell me this too. Nehru says, I'm sure there is something in this house. As she is taking tea, glass on the table falls down and breaks, and both Nehru and Sanjeev is shocked, and the glass is now in a powdered form. There is only one meaning for it. Next to the house, she had a neighbor and the same old lady, and Nehru says, do you know who used to stay in this house before me? The lady says, you come with me. The lady says, how many months pregnant are you? She says 8 months. The lady asks, why did you shift it here? Nehru says, we wanted to shift here before the baby is born. The lady is about to say something and she hears her house doorbell and says, I'm sorry, auntie, I will meet you later and talk to you. Nehru sees a lady maid and says she has come to do housework, and the real person says in just 24 hours she can see that the lady does good job, but she doesn't talk. But how do I know if it was for something good or? The maid looks up and sees the figure walking and her eyes turns white. Nehru is sleeping in the hall as scene shown in the start, and as the ghost figure sits next to Nehru and touches her tummy, Nehru wakes up and sees the figure and tries to move away and screams. Sanjay says it's alright. Everyone sees bad dreams, and remember, the doctor says that mothers get a bad dream during these times. Nehru shouts saying, this is not a dream, Sanjay 4. I am not mad. I am trying to make you understand all this well, but you don't seem to understand me. Sanjay says, relax and eat now, and feeds Nehru. Nehru looks at her hands and sees starches and looks at her fingernails, and it's short, and she recalls the figure holding her hands. The old lady comes to Nehru and asks, how are you? You are fine, right? Nehru says, no, auntie. I am having scary dreams these days. I feel that something is going to happen to my child. The lady says, I didn't want to tell anything at first, but I better now. All the problems is because of this house. Nehru says, what? The old lady says, there used to be a couple here, and that lady was also pregnant. But her husband didn't want the child. He tried to told her and slapped her, but she loves the child, and a few days before her delivery, she committed suicide. 1 month after that, her husband died too. Could be that lady's spirit is in this house. Niru is shocked and the old lady says take care and I'm worried for you. Faster leave this house as it's best for you and your child. Niru goes inside the house and calls for the maid and calls Sanji for to come back home now itself and we need to leave this house. Sanji 4 says alright. I'm coming and Niru convinces herself that nothing will happen to my child and she falls asleep and it's now night. The TV on itself and she wakes up and looks at the time and suddenly hears a child crying and he sees a child sitting in front of her and the child is crawling toward the room and Niru touches her tummy and she is not pregnant. Niru says my baby. Niru enters inside the baby room and hears the sound of a lady where she turns and sees the maid and she looks possessed. The maid is pointing towards Niru where Niru looks at her tummy and she is pregnant and the maid is still pointing towards Niru and starts walking towards Niru. Niru says Niru and goes down and she sees the maid in the hall and Niru runs back up. As Niru is standing, the maid starts walking towards Niru and Niru runs to the balcony and there is nowhere else for her to go. The maid is pointing at Niru's baby and Niru says no and jumps down. The real husband is shown where he says he was busy and he got a call that the Niru has fell down and we had taken to hospital and she has woken up. I went to the house and I saw Niru in a bad condition and I realized what Niru has said was all true. The real doctor is shown where the doctor has been doing paranormal science when a person's belief is low. The negative energy can enter them and this is what happened to Nirusha's maid and it's known as possession. The real Niru says what happened and how I am safe now is all thanks to God and my child is now 5 years old. I hope you like this story. For latest updates please do subscribe.